Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm your host, Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, retail tech investor, and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you the insights from some of retail's leaders and legends, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is sponsored by the following. PredictSpring is a global point-of-sale platform live in 22 countries. The platform includes mobile POS, endless aisle, fulfillment, inventory management, and clienteling, creating a true omni experience for customers and associates. PredictSpring powers Suit Supply, Converse, Lovesac, Decium, Janie and Jack, and Bouclair. Breakfast helps brands like HelloFresh, Perfume.com, and QVC increase revenue across Meta and TikTok by creating hundreds of user-generated content video ads. The Breakfast Creator Network, with over 5,000 strong, produces original content that is authentic to each platform and built to drive performance, all done in as little as 3 weeks. Check out breakfast.io. That's BRKFST.io. Welcome to this week's KPOV for week ending September 29th. Building on prior week's headline of sporting goods giant Dick's shrinkage, wait for it, Target announces it will close 9 stores, citing theft as being the key driver. Shrinkage remains a big challenge, not only to profits, but also to the security of sales associates and customers. And a huge annoyance with more and more product requiring associates to unlock or retrieve goods from secured areas. Chico's to be acquired by Sycamore Partners for $1 billion, a 65% premium on its most recent share price. Chico's and their portfolio of brands, White House Black Market, and Soma, will join Sycamore brands that include Talbot's, Ann Taylor Loft, Lane Bryant, Express, and Hot Topic. Out of curiosity, when they were deciding to launch the casual, moderately priced women's brand, what name did they decide not to go with? Lululemon partners with Peloton, creating a co-branded apparel while announcing it is dropping Mirror. This represents an 85% markdown on Lulu's original purchase price of Mirror and would also appear as if they are dropping one knife only to catch another. Now for my homies, Miller-Knoll, parent company of Design Within Reach, reported quarterly sales down 15%. The home space in general has been a challenging space coming off of the huge pandemic-driven spike. RH has seen its valuation drop almost 35% since August. However, Williams-Sonoma just hit a 52-week high as it reported that retail investor Leonard Green increased his stake in the company. On the value front, Costco reported its fourth quarter sales up 9%, ending the year up 6%, with sales reaching just over $35 billion. And finally, H&M, not only can they do fast fashion well, growing sales in their most recent quarter by 6%, but now they're also improving their bottom line, growing the quarter's profits by 61%, focusing on cost cutting and better inventory management. And now to our previously recorded podcast. Today's guest on the Retail Pilot is Jan Singer, who's built a career leading global consumer retail brands. In her most recent role at J.Crew, Jan served as CEO, leading the company through a global reset. Prior to J.Crew, she served as CEO for Victoria's Secret and Spanx. Prior to being a CEO, Jan spent a decade at Nike, where she was corporate vice president of global apparel and footwear. And before that, she served as vice president, general manager of the women's division at Reebok and held executive roles in global luxury beauty market for Prada, Calvin Klein, and Chanel. Jan currently serves as an independent director for Brown-Forman and Acushnet Holdings, and is also a senior advisor for McKinsey. Welcoming Jan Singer to the Retail Pilot. Jan, it's great to see you.
Hey, Ken. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
It's good to have you on board. We can talk about not only the retail journey, your journey, but also just what's happening out there in business today, as I'm sure we'll get a lot from your perspective. But before we jump into that, tell us a little bit about your journey to retail and fashion.
Well, gosh, it's been such an amazing journey for me. It kind of spans across different categories of business and not just retail. The beginning of my journey really was around product and brand on the manufacturing companies. It wasn't about direct retail at all. So whether that was in luxury goods, beauty, Chanel, Calvin Klein, or Prada, or whether it was at Nike, as we all know at the time, largely manufacturing and wholesaling, more recently, more retail. It's been an incredible journey across what I'd say beauty, bras with Victoria's Secret, and now most recently apparel and footwear with some of the more traditionals. But you never thought that basketball shoes, beauty, and bras would have anything in common, but they kind of do in the way that you make product. So that's been a very interesting journey. All of it underpinned, Ken, by companies who believe in innovation, who really believe in innovating the products that they make to serve consumers who are at the center of everything they do. And then in the most recent years, I realized, wow, of course, retail game was changing, channels were changing. Let me get closer to the consumer. And that's when things like Victoria's Secret and J. Crew kind of entered the picture. But the first part was really about bras, basketball, and beauty were really about innovation, manufacturing, thinking about problem solving for the consumer, if you will.
Any truth to the rumor that you found a phone number for Chanel and you ended up speaking with the president and landing a job at Chanel?
Yeah, not a rumor. It's actually a story I've told a lot of times. I'll tell it to you quickly. But essentially, I graduated with a psych degree and a business minor, and I wanted to work in New York City in beauty and fashion. And I couldn't get a job because I couldn't type. I never took my typing class. So I went back to Catherine Gibbs Secretarial School and learned how to type. I'm still fast, Ken. I can do about 60 words a minute. I'm like, who knew computers were going to come and it would be helpful? But it was. And I landed a traditional secretary job in real estate in a leasing department. And my department basically had all the rent control leases that this property owner owned, and they were converting to co-ops and condos. And my job was to make the copies of all these leases and really mundane stuff. And the market crashed. I'm not going to tell you what year that was. And the market crashed and they were laying everybody off. But one of the last envelopes to come on my desk had a Chanel return address. And it was a fat envelope. And we know as New Yorkers, those fat rent control leases were like gold. And I knew it was a rent controlled lease. And I knew that it was probably important to the person that was the tenant to get it renewed. And so before I left, I thought I should hand this off to the right person and let them know that it was in good hands, because I would want to know if I had that beautiful lease. And the return address was Chanel. So I made the call myself and talked to the person who owned the lease and let them know that I was leaving. And I was always coming to New York to be in beauty or in fashion. And I noticed that he worked at Chanel. Was there anybody I could call? And he said, oh, right away, you could call the HR department and speak to blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, that's so helpful. Thank you so much. But I had no idea who I was talking to. And I hung up the phone and I called back the main number, 212-688-5055. I think that was the number. I remember it to this day. And I asked for the title of the person I spoke with. And they said, well, he's the president of the company. Well, that's convenient. So I called HR and said, so-and-so told me to call and inquire about working as a secretary. And they said, come right down. And I did. And I took my typing test and I got the job, and the rest is history. But that it really was about realizing I didn't come to New York with a network. I didn't come with the resources to just find my way to fashion, beauty, or publishing. And I was going to have to be taking some courageous moves to find that network myself. And that was a little bit of luck and a little bit of opportunity at the same time.
Which we all need.
Every day.
You've had a number of leadership roles, C-level positions. Which job did you find to be the most challenging? And then which job did you find to be the most rewarding?
Well, I don't think there's been a job in my life that wasn't challenging. I'm a person who somehow believes in my heart and soul that anybody can do anything as long as they're willing to do whatever it takes to learn and grow. So I tend to put myself in situations that push me hard. I'm always curious about what my limit is. And my parents always worked, and I never really believed in a finish line. But so I've never put myself in a situation that wasn't challenging. But of course, there's moments that are more challenging than others. Going through the '08 crisis at Nike and being able to navigate the global footwear engine through that moment and ensure quality growth, but also ensure that we take care of the teams as best we could was very, very difficult. I think it was the second time ever in Nike's history that they had to let people go. I mean, for a company like Nike, who really cares more than people can even imagine if they haven't worked there, that's a very emotional, very important, thoughtful process. And it's one that was done strategically, but with a lot of soul and not for the faint of heart at all. I saw factory owners in Asia face to face to deliver news that was very difficult and people cried. That's not nothing. So I would say that was a very, very challenging moment, but no less challenging was leading J. Crew through a restructure financially through COVID. No less challenging. So there's always been moments of challenge, really epic challenge. But on the other side of that, every challenge has a piece for me that brings learning and therefore energy. I get a lot of energy around innovation and education. And whether it's myself learning or teaching or my team, it gives me great energy and momentum to have learned something. So I would say, conversely, being at Nike for 10 years and running the global footwear business and the global apparel business and really being at the heart and soul of that company was a lesson in leadership to the next level, a masterclass given to me as a gift. And hopefully I was able to receive and impart onto the team. So I would say that was one of the most important decades of my career and one that I still hold in my heart. And the people in that moment are still dear friends.
You've been in a number of leadership roles. You mentioned leadership. What qualities do you feel that you were able to extol, to share, to impart on your teams that set you apart as a leader?
Well, I learned by seeing, kind of like tell me, show me, let me kind of a person. So I watched a lot of leaders I had a lot of respect for in good times and in bad times. And what they taught me were things like being a generous leader, which is that you're not first, being an energy giver. Things are hard, bringing the room up, leading with optimism, being an enterprise leader, meaning thinking beyond my own space, considering the other, being a high profile leader, knowing when to be in the front and knowing when to be in the back, making complicated things very simple and repeatable. I would say that's something I find a lot of energy from as well and had to be learned. It's a super complicated $50 billion now business, Nike. You can imagine how simple you have to make things and it has to be repeatable. So all of those things were things I was witnessing from leaders I really respected, but more importantly, leaders I saw who could move a room, who instead of saying, because I said so, were asking questions and people were more than happy to be in service and lead their teams forward. I think that was the most impressive thing for me. When I moved from the East Coast to Oregon, I saw the head of global footwear at the time ask the running team what they thought about a new innovation in a sock liner, I think was the topic. And he asked a lot of questions. He was curious. And they had a great dialogue. And I remember saying to him after, you really want that sock liner? And he said, I do. And I said, why didn't you just tell them to put the sock liner in the shoe? And he said, because if I had said that, it would have been interesting and not sufficient. People only do what they want to do. So the conversation was there any value? What did they learn? Would it be something they would consider? And if it were, then they would do it with rigor and vigor and they would win. But me telling them to do it would be them proving to me why it wasn't a good idea. So I just thought that was an epic moment for me to witness and realize that just because you're the leader doesn't mean you're the boss.
When you think about your skill set, everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses. What are Jan's strengths? What were you best at? What were you famous for? Or what would you be recalled for across any of the companies that you served? How would they describe you as a leader?
Oh gosh, Ken, I don't know. I would say, I hope, and this was a time when culture wasn't a conversation. I hope they would describe me as more heart than not, that I was always a cheerleader and champion of the team first. I realized through whether it's psych training or just being anthropologist at heart or just freaking nosy, that really creating a good environment was the key to getting good work. When I actually ran global footwear for my boss, I remember looking at him saying, I barely wear a sneaker. Like, what are you talking about? And he said, make it a great place to work and they will make great product. And I said, it can't be that simple. He said, it's that simple. And he was right. So I realized like loving them up and finding the possibility in them and setting them up for success and managing with courage when needed was what I knew. I wasn't going to out financial engineer somebody. I wasn't going to out shoe dog somebody. I wasn't going to out retail somebody, but I was going to create an environment where they could do their best work, where they can innovate, where they could fail and recover, where they could take risk and recover, so to speak, or where they could have their voice heard. And this was far beyond the moment we're in now. That was not how business was run. And I think that I entered businesses at a time where transformation was needed. And when that's needed, generally the tone of the team when you come in is exhausted and sometimes beaten up. So if you can inspire and bring energy and hear them and have a vision, I think the other part is I could feel like see around corners about where the consumer would go with us, where we had permission to go. If you can bring that vision and bring that simplicity of thought and create an environment that they can win in, I hope that that's what my legacy has been at those companies.
It's funny, you look at brands today, you look at retailers today, companies, and so much goes into running a company today. The complexity of the business, I think, versus 10, 15 years ago is much greater. Certainly with regard to technology, the customer experience, so many variables come into play. Which part of the business did you favor most? Were you on the product side? Were you on the operations side? There had to be a favorite meeting that you would always look forward to. And then there was also a meeting that you didn't want to go to. Tell us which meetings were the ones you look forward to versus the which ones you try to get out of.
Well, I believed in my heart because I grew up in brand and marketing that was like my love. And it was until I was introduced to product creation. And then even within product creation, I thought the consumer, the insights, the actual editing and assorting was my heart. And I actually avoided in the beginning the sourcing and manufacturing side. I had amazing leaders in that space. They didn't need me in their kitchen. I was letting them do their job. And I remember the day my boss said to me, you got to get involved there. And then I went, and that was magic. Sourcing, manufacturing, development. I love the brand. I love the insights and design and merchandising, but taking 2D to 3D and really making is like next level of energy for me. And I don't care if it's a Dorito potato chip or a sneaker or coding, it's the creation, the engineering that I think is very interesting. And when we hit the COVID situation, it was a good thing I jumped into that space prior to, because if you have not been in that space and you didn't understand sourcing, supply chain, logistics, any of that, transportation, you were really a deer in the headlights in COVID. So I had a lot of energy for that space, a lot of passion for it. I had obviously some wisdom in it. And those became my favorite conversations because at the end of the day, whether it's taking 2D to 3D and solving problems around the product, then it's scaling what you're doing, which is not easy. And then it's shipping what you're doing and getting it to the consumer in the last mile. All of those value chains are super interesting to me. And so they became my favorite space, and they become, for me, I think even now in my board work, where on both boards, they faced extraordinary sourcing manufacturing situations and navigated beautifully. And I was able to govern with confidence in my role as a director. So I would say those became what I thought was going to be what I'd like the least. And it might be because the first time I ever did it, the guys played a prank on me and packed my bag full of shoe lasts, which are really heavy to carry through Asia. So ha ha ha, I hated that. I got through it and learned very quickly that actually was a space I loved. So again, a lesson in I tend to go towards what I think is going to be the hardest thing for me in life. And so I really ended up loving those meetings. Okay, a meeting that makes me kind of sleepy. There are definitely meetings that are not my favorite of nobody wants to sit through a weekly inventory meeting, but it's part of the value chain. Of course you have to. And if you can find the parts of it that do bring you energy, like did we place the right bets? Or how are we going to get rid of what we don't need? Getting the creative innovation thinking around those problems. There really isn't a meeting that's not interesting when you're sitting in the C-suite. There really isn't. There shouldn't be. Just some are more interesting than others.
Funny, you mentioned sourcing being something that was maybe furthest from your area of interest when you were coming up through the ranks, and now something that you're very familiar with and probably helping companies with their supply chain. For me, it was technology. I was just so not into technology. It was a necessary evil.
Yeah.
But if I pulled into a tech meeting, I wanted to know, like, the stores are offline. We have a problem with a corporation's server. I mean, those are the meetings I would go to. Then I would know it was really important. Otherwise, I didn't really want to know about technology. And now it's one of my favorite parts of the business because it's helping solve so many of the problems that I came up against when I was in companies, running companies, working with brands and retailers. So it is funny how sometimes a weakness or an area that doesn't have much appeal originally can become a real favorite when you dig into it.
Yeah, I think so. When people ask me about their career path, we talk about this a lot. Don't assume you know. And even if you think you know, make sure you really immerse in it till you decide it's not for you and be open.
You've had a number of CEO jobs. Do you have a startup template? I mean, when you're there, do you have a playbook? Is there a Jan Singer way of approaching a new business once she gets into the CEO chair?
Ken, I love a repeatable model. So yes, I think more or less, of course, everything has its own nuance, right? I think the first part of it is, why am I even here? Why am I here? Why did the board or the private equity group bring me in? What problems do they think they have? Then it's being nosy. What problems does the team think they're having? Really curious. And then it's kind of bubbling that down to the critical few and understanding what a potential path forward might look like. Not that I've written, I'm listening to the problems and I'm asking what their solutions are. And I'm trying to find patterns in that add up to the critical three things that will move the needle. So yeah, I think there's a repeatable model. I think first is, again, highly curious about why are you bringing me here? What do you think the problem is? Owner, board members, shareholders. And then to the team, what's going on? What are you facing? What are you loving? What are you hating? What's happening? What's in your way? And then trying to find the overlap between those two things and picking the critical three things that can add value. And then enrolling the team in writing that value creation plan with me so they own it and going back to it over and over again. If it doesn't meet the filters of that value creation team, that plan, we're probably not going to talk about it very much. And hopefully we're not resourcing it. Some things you do that are not as major, but you hopefully get the team really focused so that there can be some quick wins. Because probably if I'm coming in, it's not because the last CEO had such a great time, they didn't want to leave, right? They left. If I'm coming in, these teams have tried and are probably, like we said, exhausted or frustrated, and they need some wins. They need some wind in their sail. So that's kind of my initial process. And I really try to do that with the facts and listening to the emotion of it. But the facts really matter. The data matters to me, but there's more data informed, not just data driven, right? Data informed, because again, we're in a business. If we're just going to be data driven, we're going to keep selling, the same thing we've sold 100 times. We've got a group of people that want to move forward, and we have to honor that and listen to that too. So data informed.
Well, you've had the good fortune of running a number of great brands such as Victoria's Secret, Spanx, and then you've also been brought in to do some turnarounds, which was the case with J. Crew, something that I also experienced. How long were you at J. Crew?
Only a year, 2020, right at COVID. I
Oh,
joined February 2020. We hit COVID, end of February, March.
yep.
We had a tremendous debt stack that I knew about coming in. We had a path forward that, as I was coming in, was not materializing, and COVID hit. So the coming into financial engineer and go through a process that would bring the debt to zero was the game. And then coming out of that process, there was change of control. So it was shorter than I would have liked, but the work we needed to do got done. And I'm really happy about that. Horrible moment in everybody's life and a horrible moment for the team. Social injustice and unrest. We lost a beloved team member to COVID in the very beginning. I was in person for a month and then I was in the office about once a week through COVID in the darkest days of New York City. So crazy times, Ken, crazy times.
Let's take a quick break with a word from our sponsors. Bluecore's software solution turns anonymous online shoppers into known customers and repeat customers. Bluecore enables retailers to personalize and optimize their email, SMS, and site marketing campaigns by delivering targeted and relevant messages based on where every customer is in their journey. Bluecore replaces annoying high-volume messaging with high-value messaging. Customers include Alo Yoga, Neiman Marcus, and Gap. In these leadership positions, clearly you've talked about creating momentum, and it sounds like you brought a very positive vibe to the team. I can see you being an in-front leader, looking for people to follow. How did you build your team? Did you come in, shake it up? Were you replacing people right away? Were you bringing people from past jobs? Talk to me a little bit more about your process of shaping a leadership team.
Yeah. I want to take it back to Nike for that first, and then I'll take it up to J. Crew if you want. But just as an example, I ran global footwear for 5 years. And then my boss came to me and said, the executive team wants you to run global apparel. And I said, oh, come on. If you guys want me to quit, I can quit. You don't have to put me in apparel. I've seen amazing people, some of which on your podcast, run global apparel. It's not an easy thing at Nike. It's not valued the same as footwear. It's not resourced. What are we doing? And they said, no. We're going to invest. It's a growth driver and we're going to set it up for success. Okay, great. And they said, we want you to talk to the entire apparel organization tomorrow, which is the day before spring break. And at Nike, spring break is like week of Christmas, right? You're gone. So no one's going to come to this town hall to listen to yet another. I think I was the 7th apparel leader in 8 years, something crazy, Ken. So nobody's coming to this meeting to listen to me talk about apparel, especially a footwear person. That was like taboo. And in fact, it was packed. And it was packed with people who looked exactly like my footwear town hall people, full of energy, wanting to win, sitting on the edge of their seat. And I was like, holy cow, these are amazing people. We can do this here. So I met my team. And I'll tell you, Charlie Denson, who was the president of Nike at the time, who I really have so much respect for, always talked about competency and chemistry and balance when it came to org talent and planning. And I really valued that. And I met my team and it occurred to me that if we were going to reset apparel, it had to be a mix of how Nike did things, how the industry did things. It had to be something kind of in the middle. And my team was 100% Nike only knowledge for an average tenure of 30 years. Okay. But there were people in Nike who had apparel experience, industry, outside. So what would happen if I could honor and preserve the Nike knowledge, bring in people who were already at Nike but had majority external, and maybe I'll need 1 or 2 people who are 100% new to Nike external apparel knowledge. What would that feel like? So that was my thinking as I got to know the team. There were people on the team. And again, these people had been through multiple leaders and 30 years of this conversation. Oh, we're going to reset apparel again. And there were a few people on the team who had unbelievable institutional knowledge on very complicated topics, innovation, on team and licensed sports deals, which we could have a whole podcast on that business, really important business. We had just signed the NFL, 32 teams needed 3 uniforms immediately, right? We had World Cup coming up, the Olympics. So by God, we needed people who knew how to do that. But we also needed people who were at Nike, who came to Nike thinking they were going to do what you know well, and were ending up in planning roles into geography. So give me those people. They're apparel people. And then I'll fill in with whatever. So I generally assess the situation of what problem I'm trying to solve, really deeply trying to understand the talent on the team. And I don't mean the job they're in today. I took 2 people who were really banging their head into the wall at Nike, trying to be apparel people, sitting in geographies, selling and merchandising, and said, hey, come make product. And they just did amazing work. So it's finding who I already have, what I need for the business, and then looking around the company and finding out how can I put a round peg in a round hole, and then fill in with talent that I know myself or from the outside. But I never come in with, okay, we're wiping out the team and bringing my own people in. I don't think I've ever full on taken out a team and done that anywhere.
I've seen that happen at times, often with turnarounds where someone will come in. It's like almost like a buyer who comes and goes, oh, the area I'm inheriting is terrible. I'm marking everything down. I'm going to bring in all new product,
Yeah.
which is right at the time until the next buyer sees what that buyer bought. And then it's a rinse and repeat. So you like to build from within and then augment from the outside where there might be some needs that can't be addressed from internal talent.
And making sure the most important jewels to find are the people who are internal in the wrong jobs. That's like my favorite thing. Like they have talent. Everybody adds value. They just might not be in the right job. So
And
can
then
we do?
you're leveraging their understanding of the DNA and the company as well, and
That's right.
giving them a second lease on life, so to speak.
Yep. And then there are people that don't fit to where we're going to go or don't agree with it, and that doesn't work. So sometimes that happens as well.
What excites you about retail today?
It is so dynamic. I don't think one company has everything figured out. So whether it's channel dynamics, the wholesale business, wholesale is dead, except it's not. And actually, the energy and innovation of the new businesses need the wholesalers, or they can't get the capacity and the cost they need on their goods, and they don't have any awareness. So there's a place for wholesale, and that's changing. Direct. I don't think stores are dead. I believe in real estate. Maybe it's moved from the mall to Main Street. And I love that that's happening, or open air in a different format, but stores matter. And you can't deny what's happening direct through digital, social. It's dynamic. And the board I'm serving with Acushnet is golf. And so it's Titleist and FootJoy. And they have a different kind of retail called the green grass shops, which are pro shops, which I thought I knew retail. And I'm the intern at my own pro shop so that I could learn the green grass shop. It's another form of retail. So I think as long as retail continues to innovate and meet the consumer where they are, bring a brand experience, make sure that they really are in service, there's always room for physical. And on the digital side, as long as, again, you know who I am and you serve me at the moment I want what I want, there's speed and efficiency and excitement in that as well. I will always believe that retail is great therapy. I just do, whether it's always a pick me up, whether it's a lipstick or whether it's a large purchase. Like I'm a person who has witnessed all too many times how important being part of that tribe and that moment is. Some people drink, some people gamble, some people have vices, who knows what. Some people shop in a healthy way, some people shop in an obsessive way, but there's a retail part of that. And sometimes it's the engagement with shopkeepers or store people, or even online customer service that people are craving, or online social influencer. That engagement is a human need. And so I think there's a lot of dynamic movement. It's not over. The AI component that you know all too well is changing the game again for us. And we don't really know the full extent of what that will do for us. But I have 16-year-old twins. I'm in the middle of retail discovery through their eyes. It's a whole different thing. While they're gaming and while they're socializing and while they're connecting online, they look at it a completely different way. So I think there's never been a better time to
You
be in
mentioned
this.
stores, you mentioned the return to Main Street, maybe you're the pivot away from the malls. What are you seeing in stores that you're finding interesting or different, or how is technology being used today? Whether to impress you as a customer, your twins as customers, anything that you're seeing out there that we should take note of?
I mean, I always think in frameworks, like I said. So I think about know me, solve my problem, serve me. That's the framework I think about for retail. So and I do also appreciate the movement to small Main Street in third tier, fourth tier, five tier town. Like I think anybody can open up an environment where we know each other, we build community and we connect. So I think that's really important. It's important for my kids too. It's not just digital. They want to go in and they want to be part of something. So I think if I go in to retail, no matter what channel, and you know me, through technology, it's always going to be through technology. Okay, it can be through shaking hands and saying hi, but you ultimately should know what I've bought through your company, how I've engaged with them through social media, if I've been on chatting with them, you should know me. And I think there are brands that surprisingly do that really well. And then the service part of that, once you know me, and that doesn't mean bombard me, it means really serve me. And again, if I'm having a problem, you will anticipate that and get ahead of it. So even like when you look at Gucci, I was surprised 5 years ago when Gucci, a luxury brand, was as technically advanced as they were on their commerce in store and online, that they knew me right away, that they were absolutely solving my problems through whether it's chat, everybody has that. But at the time, I was calling customer service. I had my own, felt like personal shopper. He could text me. And I had a relationship now, even though I wasn't in New York walking into Fifth Avenue. It used to be back in the day. You'd visit your favorite salesperson. Maybe you'd get an advanced look at the line. You could get your name in the shoe book and reserve a pair of shoes. But if you didn't have that relationship and you were out, now they were one of the first to make you feel like you had that relationship even online and able to not send me emails with recommendations, but actually text me and suggest and probably have a high conversion from that. So luxury goods, I think they're finally catching up where they were the last to the table. Even going into Hermes on Fifth Avenue and seeing almost the matrix screens and scrolling through and finding the items that you wanted for a brand like Hermes is pretty impressive. And then there's the expected. The expected would be to be able to have a decent experience with an Amazon, which at the first was a horrible brand experience. I wouldn't say they're brand now, but at least it's gotten a little bit more inspiring. The middle groups, it's tough. There are some that do it quite well. The newer brands, I think what Love Shack Fancy's been building and doing, especially this week, they launched with the Gap. She's out in front in terms of herself being the brand with her family. She has a handwriting. She picks the right partners. She curates stores around the world. And she has an experience online that's quite acceptable. Zimmerman, the same. You know, you can pick these middle. They create an environment that's outstanding in every city around the world. The shoppers that serve you are friends and great, I would say, knowledgeable people that will get you what you need when you need it most. So there are groups that are doing all channels really well. And that's technology backed 100% because how do you move the goods around? How do you know what I've bought? So I think those are the people evolving and knowing that if they don't, they'll die. And then there are people not evolving, and that's tougher.
You mentioned Zimmerman. They got, I think they just sold the majority of the company for, was it $2 billion?
It was a big number to my friends in Boston here at Advent. Got a good deal. They have great runway in front of them, and then they've had a great 10 plus year run. Really nice.
Yeah, really impressive. What do you think about the Gap's move and bringing in Richard Dixon as the new CEO of Gap? Will he be the guy with the silver bullet?
I don't know who he is. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I think you asked a question. I'm going to kind of advance a little bit and I'll answer it. I hope you don't mind, Ken. But you asked, I think, enlightening brand you'd want to work for. And I thought about that a lot for the last week. And I don't think it's about a brand I'd want to work for. It's about a situation that you want to be in. Shareholders or a board you want to work for that see the same movie, private equity that sees the same movie, the timing of that moment. And then do you have the talent to get it done? This is an example. Who am I to say the Gap can or can't do it? It depends on who he is, who they are, what they together want to see as a movie. And then, of course, the talent to innovate and turn that thing. Anything's possible on both sides. We've seen it go both ways.
I think it's interesting. You mentioned Love Shack Fancy. They just did the collaboration with Gap. It seems to be doing well. I mean, if you go online, you'll see product is sold out. Some product is sold out. And I love the tagline on the PDP that says, yes, this is the actual price, because the customer, I think, is so used to seeing markdown prices on the Gap site. And none of the Love Shack Fancy product is marked down. Some is sold out. They have it both in adult and kids. But it just goes back to the key point that great product is what moves brands.
Yeah. And to your point, Ken, it's also, I think talent is interesting, but the timing, look, it's the girl summer. You've got Beyonce and Taylor Swift and Pink touring to sold out audiences. You've got the Barbie movie, like numbers. Nobody's been to a theater till Barbie. And Love Shack Fancy sits right in the sticky sweet center of all of that. It's the wardrobe of Taylor Swift's Swifties. So the timing is impeccable and good for them. I bought, by the way, Ken, I bought 5 pieces, just so you know.
There you
I have
go.
a 16-year-old daughter.
So what other brands are out there today that are impressing you, and what are some of the challenges you think brands are facing?
Well, we mentioned Zimmerman. I'm a big fan of what they're doing. I think they're going to continue to evolve. Well, I have to say, I really love what Patrice and Ralph Lauren have done over the last section. Talking about an established brand, I think the focus that he has brought to the business, getting the brands down to the critical few, collection, Ralph Lauren, golf. I think their digital experience, you can decide you love or hate the product. That's fine. It does matter. But I think the taking complicated to simple there is really showing through, and it's showing up in their stock price and their results. I have opinions. I love Mickey and I love Alex Mill and I love what that group is doing every day. I'm a big fan, making it so simple. I can't agree more. We have too much choice out there. So there's a lot of goodness coming from a lot of places. I think those that edit and really get to, again, a very simple idea and who, again, solve our problems or serve us are going to win. And a little bit, I would say, of an escape. I think we're all a little fatigued. We're a little preaching fatigued and a little reality fatigued. So I still believe in the power of transporting. If Love Shack Fancy takes me to Notting Hill or my daughter to a place in Taylor Swift concert for an hour, we could use it. Life's hard right now. If Zimmerman makes me feel like I'm going to resort for a second, I buy more of their very simple things, but I walk in the store and feel like I could be in, I don't know, Ibiza or Mykonos or somewhere glamorous. I'll just walk around the store and feel that and look at all of the craftsmanship, which is incredible, incredible quality. So those are things that are top of mind, but it's not just new. I think, like I said, there are some establishments that have been around that are really trying. I think Olympia's work at J. Crew is very good and trying to honor the classic heritage of J. Crew, but modernizing it in a way that is still wearable for all women, not just women who are 19 and 16 or 20 years old. So,
Speaking of J. Crew, they just named a new, I guess, president for the Madewell division, perhaps a partner or someone that you've worked with at McKinsey. Adrian
yes,
Harris.
Adrian and I work together at McKinsey. Yep, we do some senior advisory work together. She's terrific. Yeah.
All right, so film at 11. We'll see how Madewell business turns out.
There must be more to the story. She's a smart cookie, Adrian. So I'm sure she knows exactly what she's doing there.
Looking at technology, and you've talked a bit about it, any platforms out there that are of particular interest to you, whether it's online or stores or supply chain or topics or areas that are coming up in board meetings that are now a focus? Obviously, you mentioned AI. That's probably very top of mind. But within AI or within any platform, how are you seeing the platform impact retailers, or what are you seeing that's of interest to you that you're seeing being used today?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think to your point, everyone's been using AI for quite some time, but now consumer facing, we'll see what this evolves into. I have kicked around with a couple of different groups have been doing things like platforming up all the customer service, like really moving from a case number to real integrated service. So I think the story at Gladly is interesting. I don't know where they're at these days. When I was talking with them, I found it quite interesting that the beginning of that conversation was a founder who was staying at a Four Seasons monthly. And every time he checked in, they would ask if he had stayed there before. And he was infuriated by that. So he just started to pick apart customer service departments and where it came from. And the heritage was it was really attached to legal and case numbers way back. And so what a ridiculous idea in today's day and age. So the aggregation of every engagement you have with a business is what they platformed. So social media, in-store, online purchasing, you really felt like you had your own, that they really knew you, that you had your own customer service person and that you could call. A little bit what we were talking about earlier with Gucci. So I love that that's becoming more mainstream. I think the aggregation of systems to get to one version of the truth on data was shocking to me when I joined retail, that we would spend the amount of time we spent reviewing the week before to get on the same page about what sold and what didn't and what we were going to do about it. What a colossal waste of time. And that was because we didn't have the tools. So thankfully now there are multiple companies bringing tools to the front that layer on top of existing systems or replace that get everybody on one data stream and everyone can pull and have more productive conversations. I mean, that was shocking to me. So I'm excited about that. And then just in terms of engagement with consumers, I think the podcasting space that you're in, I'm a big fan. I listen to a lot of tech. I'm a big Kara Swisher, Scott Galloway listener. All of the tech reporters from the Times I find very interesting because, again, I'm trying to really understand where we are, where we're going. Lately, I'm very concerned. I'm not sure. While I love tech and it has definitely advanced us, sometimes I sit back and ask, at what cost? At what cost? Because I have 16-year-old kids, because the truth is shape shifting every day, because nobody owns the news and the facts. I'm very concerned. And I don't think we have a grip and a grasp. And I do wish that I hope we don't look back on this like we looked at big tobacco, is what I would say, for my kids' sake. And so as a mom, that's tough. As a business person, yes, it makes my life easier. But I also think I love that LVMH does deep work around craft and creativity, because if we don't, we lose art. And without the art, AI is only as garbage in, garbage out. You're only regurgitating what you already have. We need to keep moving forward. So the innovators, the ideators, the creators, the artists, the coders all matter to me deeply. And that all feeds the platforms we're talking about, doesn't it?
It's an interesting space, technology. I often wonder if today's skills required for a CEO can actually be filled by a person, or does it require two people? Can there be a successful office of the CEO? Because the skill sets required today are just so diverse, whether it's technology, it's product development, it's marketing. I mean, it's a lot for one person to oversee. Obviously, you build a team, but you look around to see what the model of the future will be like. And I often wonder if there is an office of a CEO where it really becomes a triad of operations, of technology, of product leadership. That may be a successful model. I mean, at the end of the day, someone has to be ultimately responsible to make a call, but the importance and the significance of those areas, from operations to product development to technology, are critical. And it just it gets more and more difficult in each of those areas to keep current. So I don't know. I'm curious to see when there will be some companies that have a successful model where it's maybe, again, an office of a CEO versus just one CEO overseeing all.
I think you're right, Ken, because when you look at the tech industry, it's very monolithic in the type of leadership identity, isn't it? And sometimes one major one in particular brought in an operator to balance that out, right? So the IQ, EQ, you could say it that way, or the product and tech duo that you're mentioning, or even the triad, the teams need it. The employee base needs it. If it's all one way, all tech, you're going to lose culture.
Right.
And if it's all culture, you're going to fall behind on the tech. And I'm with you. It'll be interesting to see, but I think we're going to be in tricky territory if we don't have a balance there.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go to the last part of this podcast, which is rapid fire, which you got a head start on, but I don't think I heard you name a brand that you would most like to run.
No, you didn't hear it because anything's possible. When I thought about this a long time, and you gave me this question a while ago, I mean, I could sit here and name names that's looking through the lens of today, but the brands are only as good as the leader in place and the alignment with the board and the PE group and the consumer's appetite. I mean, remember Target when it wasn't Target, right? And Apple is what it is today. Nike was what it was when I was there. It's different than it is today. I thought about this and, I could say this, this, and this, but that's through the lens of this moment. So I think it's less about what brand I would work for and more about what situation I would sign up for, because I think anything's possible.
Who would you most like to meet?
See, I didn't read past that first question, Ken, so this is rapid fire. There are so many people. There are so many people. Who would I most likely Who would I most want to meet? I kind of want to meet Steve Jobs right now.
Dead or alive, so that's counts. That's
Yeah, right now. I want to meet him and ask if this is what he imagined would happen through tech or not. I don't know what the answer would be, but it's on my mind.
or I'd love to know what's next.
Yeah, what's next and what do we need to do? Right.
Exactly. Favorite streamed show?
Oh, right now is, of course, most recently Succession, because I feel like I lived it at L Brands a little bit, just saying. So I feel like, I mean, I couldn't get enough of that. Not one redeeming quality in any one of those people. And I thought it was brilliantly written. The acting, the production, I just loved it all. So I would say, I know that's not current, but for right now, that's still,
A favorite is a favorite. Doesn't have to be
yeah.
current.
Oh, God. Wow.
If you would live or could live in any country other than the US, which country would you pick?
Oh, well, we talk about this a lot as well as a family. Will there be a day where we can't live here? Where would we live? We have this conversation. And it leads us to a conversation on climate, culture, economy. And then none of us really want to go. So everybody
That
ends
wasn't
up with,
an option. You got to go. Let's go,
well,
Gene. Come on.
I mean,
You didn't give me a brand. You got to give me a country.
I'm going to Canada because it's close enough that I can come home. I would
Okay.
probably go northern Canada to get away from it all. Maybe Nova Scotia, maybe that Newfoundland, like up there. And then I can come back because I think as a New Englander, we always come home.
Last question. Favorite designer?
Oh my, Ken.
Well, you're hitting on Zimmerman the whole time you're shopping there. Come on, let's go.
Well, okay, I have many. I mean, I
Pick
favorite
one.
women.
Pick
I
one. You
think
get a gift card. Shows up in the mail tomorrow.
Maria Dior. I mean, I don't know. Miuccia, Prada, the Zimmerman girls. Those are my top three. There's four because there's two girls. I'm giving you all women and I'm picking four.
All right. That's great. And with that, we're going to land this flight of the Retail Pilot. Jan Singer, thanks for being on with us today. It was great to see you.
Great to see you, Ken. What an honor, privilege, and I mean, super energizing. Thank you.
This is your host, Ken Pilot, landing the plane for this episode of the Retail Pilot, Leaders and Legends. Hope you enjoyed the flight. If so, please follow us on your favorite podcast app.